In the wake of Donald Trump's appearance now some time ago at the National Association of Black Journalists convention, where he started what he's then continued on with, which is questioning incorrectly, disgustingly, the identity of Vice President Kamala Harris, saying that somehow she turned black and that there's something fraudulent about how she's identifying. And we've covered this extensively, but I came across an account that I've mentioned to you before, which is the Republican Voters Against Trump account, that posted a video of Trump back in 2011 that I think gives us some insight into the gross game that he's playing here and the scam, the stunt that's going on. And so I'll show you that. Then I'll go through how I think it connects to this current moment. It's pretty obvious, but, and this is the positive part of it, how it's failing him miserably this time around. Arguably, unfortunately, the last go at this sort of stunt kind of worked for him. But this time, it seems to be contributing to a total collapsing of his campaign. So we'll get to that later. But first, here is the 2011 clip on Bill O'Reilly's show on Fox News.
What they do to the birthers is unbelievable, to a point where people are afraid to talk about this subject. They're afraid to confront you or anybody about this subject.
Do you think it's an important subject?
Listen, I have a birth certificate. Right. I have my birth certificate. And in fact, they said the one I gave yesterday wasn't good enough. So I actually got the one from the health department, which is the perfect one, okay? Because they were saying, oh, the one I gave yesterday wasn't good enough, so I got the other one. People have birth certificates. He doesn't have a birth certificate. Now, he may have one, but there's something on that person, maybe religion, maybe it says he's a Muslim, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want that, or he may not have one. But I will tell you this, if he wasn't born in this country, it's one of the great scams of all time.
Absolutely, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, I mean, you don't, but I'm starting to think.
Too crazy, even for Bill O'Reilly, it seems there. And before going further, let me actually play you something I already played, which was Chris Christie, a Republican, but someone who's opposed to Trump now. And he did make an interesting point about why Trump now is posting Vice President Harris's birth certificate and questioning her identity, just like he questioned Barack Obama's identity, and how this isn't a sign of strength, but of weakness. It's not a sign of stability, but of panic on the part of his campaign. And then we'll go further.
Impulse. You can't imagine that anybody who understands anything about politics would say, hey, here's a great idea. Go to the National Association of Black Journalists and question whether Kamala Harris is really black or not. This is what happens, George, and this is how you can tell that this race is changing. Because what happens is, when Donald Trump's ahead and he feels like he's comfortably ahead, he is willing to go with conventional, smart political advice. As soon as he thinks it's getting close, he goes back to the greatest hits. You saw this at the convention when he didn't think he was getting the reaction he wanted from the beginning of the speech. He went back to the greatest hits. You saw it at the NABJ, and you saw it last night in Atlanta.
Attacking the Republican governor.
Right. Now, here's Brian Kemp.
So what's going on right now is Trump is flailing. He's absolutely panicking about the fact that Vice President Harris's campaign is surging in popularity. We'll look at the polling in a second. His campaign is spiraling out of control. And he felt so confident in his campaign against Biden. And now, after a moment of sheer confidence, he has nothing but insecurity, and that insecurity is justified because it's looking worse and worse for him. So what does he do? He goes back to, as Chris Christie was calling it, his greatest hits or his worst hits, and that is these sorts of disgusting race-baiting attacks. And why did I say that it was sort of successful, as gross as that sounds, back in 2011? Well, because back then he was trying to establish himself and get media attention as a figure talking about politics. He then got enough attention in radical parts of the right wing to eventually facilitate what we saw in his political career. Not all because of that, but this was the beginning of a longer story. And so that tool that racist tool of questioning Barack Obama's identity, he was able to leverage into more support within the Republican Party and then extended that on and eventually became president. But right now, he's not trying to get more attention. That's not what he needs right now. He needs a campaign that could have broad appeal. So while he leans back on his gross instincts, his greatest hits, trying to rile up a very small portion of the country to make him feel like he's getting some sort of feedback, he's actually shooting himself in the foot because he's dissolving what would have been a broader coalition of voters. As a reminder, he's posting her birth certificate. You can see that. They're posting photos of her saying, oh, here's you with your Indian family members, so you must not be black, just not understanding at all the concept of biracial identities. But I think he does understand it. He's just doing this to rile up his base. And then you see that another video that we've reviewed before. Again, back years ago, he was just trying to get some relevance in any political space. So riling up a really small base and then writing that into eventually riling up enough of the base in the 2016 primary to become the nominee. And then, as much as it doesn't seem like this, he actually did do some things to have some broader appeal in the 2016 general election. But then 2020, he wasn't able to do that again. And he's not going to be able to do that again in 2024, especially when he goes back to the thing he knows best, which is just throwing red meat to his base. But the base isn't the part of the country that he should be trying to appeal to. And that's why I keep saying, you continue down this road, you're going to lose, which is fine with me. What is he trying to incite, though? Stuff like this. Kevin Sorbo saying, if Kamala really is black, have her say the N-word, let the people decide for themselves. Disgusting. And this is what Trump wants. Not understanding or not caring that this is the exact opposite, of what would help his campaign. Again, then he'll lose and we'll see it as a good thing, but MAGA will act confused. And I talked to a Trump supporter who was saying this about Kamala Harris, which doesn't even align with the most recent bizarre narrative about her. What do you think of Kamala Harris?
I don't know Kamala Harris. She's supposed to be taking care of our border, and she didn't. And maybe someone needs to check her paperwork, because from what the rumor tells me, is she's not supposed to be running for an office.
Really?
Yes.
How so?
Something to do with her parents and when she was born.
Even though she was born in Oakland?
You have to check the paperwork.
So again, I would call out to MAGA and wonder to yourself, is this the movement that you want to be a part of? That when it's desperate and when it's opposing a non-white candidate, its instinct is to go to these sorts of racist attacks? Is that the movement you want to be a part of? That instead of focusing on policy critiques, you have to rely on this sort of garbage? I'll note, just as a matter of logical consistency, this woman that I talked to is wanting to see Harris's birth certificate because of that version of the attack, that she's not qualified. Trump is posting her birth certificate to make a different point while not realizing that by posting it, he's actually confirming that he's wrong about this. Crazy contradiction and just a crazy situation altogether. But what have we seen? As Trump ramps up this language and Harris runs an incredible campaign, and that's the contrast. Look at this, real clear politics. As we talked about yesterday, Harris has in just a couple weeks gone from trailing Trump to leading him in the average of polls, and my computer's glitching out here. But then if you look at 538, she's also leading in this, as we talked about yesterday, by 2 percentage points in the national average of polls. But if you can tell, in the last, look at how many, all of the last ones they're showing, except for one, out of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, if I counted correctly. 2 are even, 1 is Trump leading, and every other one is Harris leading. That's called momentum right there. So hopefully we'll see this average continue to nudge upwards. And I'll just remind you, the criticism coming from the MAGA world is getting stranger and stranger as they get more desperate. Now, we had Laura Ingraham upset with laughing, Hannity upset with laughing, Laura Ingraham upset with hugging, and now this Fox host upset with joy. You don't believe me, but here it is.
And I just have to call her out on using the word joy. How weird is that for the vice president to come out of this presidential mess for the last 4 years and refer to it as joy? Okay, the American people are not joyful about their checkbooks. They're not joyful about inflation. They're certainly not joyful about the economy. So what in the world is she talking? What is there to be joyful about? Our borders? No there. No, like there's nothing to be joyful about other than getting a president in here to clean up the mess.
Well, apparently a message of being joyful warriors, not okay with every problem that we're experiencing, but joyful warriors is one that people are resonating with. 63% of our watch time in the last 28 days has come from people who aren't subscribed. If all of you who aren't yet subscribed can click that subscribe button, it would make all the difference. I appreciate it. Back to the video. And I think the same host said this during the same show.
Julie, save me,
I'm
please,
cringing.
from the sinking ship and the tragedy that is this.
Yeah, first of all, that's not doing women any favors. I mean, yes, it would be amazing to have a woman in the White House one day, right? That would be a huge glass ceiling shatterer. But I don't want to hear about a White House, president cooking like that, and especially a woman. Like, I don't cook, and I proudly wear that badge. I am not domesticated whatsoever, and my kids are pretty much, fending for themselves.
Look, Cheryl, what?
You're mad at Kamala Harris for saying she likes to cook? So when they're not talking about the identity attacks, they're upset with joy. Her word, not mine. Hugging, laughing, and cooking. I don't know if that's the campaign that's going to take down what is a clearly energized, motivated movement. But again, just to sort of circle back to how we started this segment, it really struck me that 11 years ago, he was doing the same thing. Even the way he was phrasing, watch this clip one more time, the way he's phrasing those questions. I don't know, maybe Obama is an American citizen. I don't know, but it's just, there's questions. He's doing the same thing that now he's going, ask Kamala, I don't know, ask her. It's her thing.
What they do to the birthers is unbelievable, to a point where people are afraid to talk about this subject. They're afraid to confront you or anybody about this subject.
Do you think it's an important subject?
Listen, I have a birth certificate. Right. I have my birth certificate. In fact, they said the one I gave yesterday wasn't good enough. So I actually got the one from the health department, which is the perfect one, okay? Because they were saying, oh, the one I gave yesterday wasn't good enough, so I got the other one. People have birth certificates. He doesn't have a birth certificate. Now, he may have one, but there's something on that birth, maybe religion, maybe it says he's a Muslim, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want that, or he may not have one. But I will tell you this, if he wasn't born in this country, it's one of the great scams of all time.
Absolutely.
So it's shockingly similar to what he's now doing. I don't know, I'm just asking questions. Other people can fill in the blanks. But he never had these sorts of questions when it was Biden. Never had these sorts of questions when it's Clinton or Bush. Quite the obvious pattern here emerging. And that gave him his initial anti-Democratic Party brand, right? And I do think he then leveraged that years later in running in the Republican Party. And to think that I keep calling it instinct, whatever it is, him believing this is how you rile up your base, that he goes back to it. It's so disturbing how transparent this is. And here was him at the press conference. So similar. And the question is super quiet.
You'll have to ask her that question because she's the one that said it. I didn't say it. So you'll have to ask her. And I very much appreciate that question, but you'll have to ask her. But I've known her for a long time, I actually contributed to her campaign a long time ago because I was a developer. I contributed to lots of campaigns of Democrats, Republicans, and some were liberal and some were conservative. But you'll have to ask her about that. But to me, it doesn't matter. But to her, from her standpoint, I think it's very disrespectful to both, really. Whether it's Indian or black, I think it's very disrespectful to both. To me, it doesn't matter.
Just really, really enraging. But I've said this in a lot of segments. Do you not feel insulted, MAGA? When he has run out of things, he doesn't know how to attack someone who's non-white, I should note. All he can think of is this. He did it once to you, and he thinks he can do it again. Really? Really? You're going to fall for it? That's insulting to your intelligence on his part. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.